this part of where we're going to go next is, okay, now what? I often leave conferences, I'm like, okay, well, now what? What do we do? So I do want to, I recently accepted a position with Endangered Species Coalition. And I do want to thank them for being one of the national groups that doesn't treat the Midwest as a flyover zone and is here and is active. You know, they're doing a lot of good work, and I'm excited to fight for something that we could talk about hounding, we could talk about trapping, we could talk about wolf hunting. I will now be working with something that 91% of the people in the United States support, and that's the Endangered Species Act. I also wanted to express a sentiment that I just received, so I'm glad that I forgot to print something, that Mark Pocan, Congressman Mark Pocan, sent an email to all of you, via me, wishing us luck here. And wanted to remind you, I've met with Mark Pocan in Washington, D.C. I'm lucky to have him as my congressman because he is on the Animal Protection Caucus, which certainly doesn't hurt the cause. You know, he has been a leader in trying to block elephant ivory trade. He has been a wolf supporter from the beginning. When he was a state legislator, voted against the wolf hunt. Not necessarily because he didn't think that we could hunt wolves scientifically, but that the democratic process was taken away from the people in the state of Wisconsin, and more specifically, that those decisions were taken out of the people responsible for bringing the wolf to great success. What he did want me to tell you, and I can go a little bit more into it, is that currently, and I'm not trying to be partisan except for that it is, with several bills, there are a few Democrat exceptions, but what is happening is they're putting riders on bills that don't seemingly have anything to do with endangered species. And one that we're currently very concerned about, and Mark Pocan emailed me and asked that I speak to you about this, is that there's an interior appropriations bill right now. It's H.R. 2822. Now, it was stopped because they couldn't come to a consensus about the Confederate flag. I find that humorous, personally, that the Confederate flag sort of worked in my favor, and I never thought that I would ever find myself saying that. That's how crazy politics are right now. But let's put wolves to the side for a minute on that. There will be removal of greenhouse gas regulations. They will make vast changes to the Clean Water Act. Navigable waters, they're going to redefine that. They're changing the definition of fill material. They are lead, ammunition, and tackle. You know, getting rid of any regulations. Basically, I mean, I could go on and on. There's 146 writers on here. None are good. But you know, I think that we need to, it's a deregulation of environmental protection. And I think when I think about that, and I think about history, and how over and over again, it seems to cycle, I don't think we can properly rely on business without some sort of government regulation, and all of our environmental protections are being deregulated. Specifically, this is a rider, one of the riders in this poison pill rider bill, frankly, is one to delist the Great Lakes wolves in Wyoming. Okay, forget the debate about delisting or not delisting for just a minute. In some of these bills, it also writes in that we don't have a chance to challenge to these things. And that's part of our democracy. That's checks and balances. So I think, you know, I'm glad to follow Matt on this, that, you know, part of the getting this conference together is I don't know what to do. So I did want to echo Mark Pocan says, and I quote, "I strongly encourage you to contact the House Appropriations Committee to continue funding domestic conservation initiatives such as the Land and Water Conservation Fund, state and wildlife grant programs, and the North American Wetland Conservation Act. Among every other environmental protection and restoration request should be denied." So I have to hand it to Mark. That was very, very nice of him to say. That is House Bill H.R. 2822. And the other little cute, funny story is that we went to see George Clinton in Madison with Mark Pocan. He happened to be there, so we're dancing and we're discussing, you know, the House bills. And what he told me in between a set break, was the top 10 noisemakers get on the agenda. It doesn't matter what the issue is. So, you know, I think we have a chance here in these workshops and coming up and talking about democracy and law, coming in at different angles, but doing it at the same time. So we're really, really annoyingly loud. So let's not annoy the media so much, but let's really annoy Congress, because they work for us, and they need to remember that. I think, you know, my last parting statements would be, you know, we've talked about a lot of species of wildlife, and I don't think the wolf is just another species of wildlife. I think the wolf, as we've heard, holds sacred meaning to a lot of people that we've heard from, and that has to be respected. You know, it's really the wolf that has brought us all here in this room, even if the wolf isn't your issue. So I have to think at least the wolves that maybe have unjustly died, in my opinion, we're all here now. So, you know, the wolf gives me hope that if we can save the wolf and save this attack, we're in pretty good shape to start fighting these other environmental bills. So to me, yeah, it is a symbol. And I think that's a valid reason to save something, because it's a symbol of working together to fight for a better world. And with that, I am gonna bring up the person's shoes I have to fill. Chris Silva, that was formerly from Endangered Species Coalition, who is going on to do bigger and better things. And he can tell you a little bit about he didn't know anything about the wolf issue before he had that job. So I'm gonna turn it over to him, and then we'll hear from Maureen Hackett wants to talk about one thing she's doing in DC very briefly, and then I'll let you know the plan of what we do. I will have you out of here by 4:45. I promise, hang in there. Thank you.
I have to leave at like 4:45, so I can tell you I'll do my best to make sure we're out there. Actually, I did know a little bit about wolves before I started working for the Endangered Species Coalition. I actually used to work for Jill Fritz back there at Key Michigan Wolves Protected in Michigan, where I'm from. So I guess just a little bit about me is I'm a political consultant that's what I do for like a living. I actually am running another ballot campaign in Michigan right now. And that's one of the reasons I had to leave my job at the Endangered Species Coalition. I'm really happy to have Melissa there, continuing my work. I feel really good about it. She's much better connected than I am in this activist community, so in the Great Lakes and Midwest. So I think, you know, she'll do really well. I guess I just kind of want to echo a couple things. I'm going to be floating around into session groups, and we can kind of talk. You know, I do a lot of grassroots kind of tactics and strategies. That's a pretty big part of what I do professionally. So, you know, just to kind of echo a couple of things, like Melissa was saying, you know, when we were doing these, and I know Jill went through the whole, this is what happened in Michigan thing, so I don't have an hour, so I can't like tell you all about it. We just don't have that much time. But in one of the lobbying efforts or grassroots efforts we were doing, we were having our people go to these in-district meetings with their state representatives, and honest to God, all of them but like one or two that I went to, it was just the state rep like sitting there, you know, doing Sudoku, playing Angry Birds, right? Because like no one goes to these things ever. So, you know, like it's what she's saying is much more true on the state level. You know, go to those meetings, even if you know they're going to ignore you. Like if I had $1 for every politician who ignored me, like I wouldn't have to do this for a living anymore, you know. But they know you then, and they know that you're watching, and they know that you're going to be there. Even in what I do now, the people that I deal with first are the people that I know that are going to call me if I don't, you know. So that's, you know, that I think that's one of the best things you can do, and I guess like don't get too intimidated by it, because you know, at the end of the day, it's a numbers game, right? I do think money in politics is a really big problem that we all have to face, but I also just want to leave you with this: almost half the people don't vote, right? So like there's a big part of just figuring out how we make this issue important to them, and you know, the demographics I think are shifting to kind of bring the social barometer back to I think where all of us are. I think that's kind of, we've all talked about that. So I think the big thing is just picking up on these, or increasing the amount and the, I don't want to say like the attitude of which we're doing it, but we just have to keep up the things that we're doing, and the kind of just very targeted tactics. So like, you know, keeping up the pressure on your state reps, your federal reps, just knowing how the system works, like knowing how the system of subcommittees and all these things work, knowing where like the real power is, knowing the people that you might have locally that have some pretty good power, maybe federally or on some of these state boards or committees, and just being able to leverage your ability as an activist, you know, like these letters to the editors, these op-eds, like all these things, you know, they add up. So I've seen pretty good things happen on the grassroots level. I know it's totally possible. So I just kind of want to be here to just thank you all for doing this. I'm really glad that people are passionate on these issues and working them and trying to get some positive, progressive change on them. And then also, I know, you know, Melissa's going to do great at her job. That being said, if any of you are doing projects or something, you know, give me a call, give me an email, tell me you're down for wolves, and, you know, like I'll see what I can do to help you guys out. I don't know if you ever want to get anything on the ballot, run for office, give me a call. But that's all I've got.
Okay, I get a whole 5 minutes. Thank you. I'm Maureen Hackett. You all know that because I keep talking. But the first time I met Chris Silva, he called me up. He said, do you guys have any people that are willing to go to Washington? We'll pay their fees. We'll get them there. Not fees, but their expenses. Howling for Wolves supplied the people to other organizations. The point I'm trying to make is the reason we got those people to go with those other organizations is, number one, we were generous of heart. We're not going to keep our people to ourselves. Anybody, you know, it's all one big fight. You know, we have to work together. So that's kind of the main point. But the second thing is we had on the ground, we had a great volunteer coordinator who just left Howling for Wolves for other things after 3 years. We had events all over the place all the time. So we didn't just put ads up. We didn't just use paid media. We had actions that called in the media to come too, so then we got what we call earned media. And that's how and then we had people take an action on our website, and we made sure we gathered information. At first it was just asking people for a zip code because we were worried they wouldn't want to, and an email because they wouldn't want to sign our letter, they didn't know who we were. And then gradually we got specific addresses so that we could help them take an action with their state legislature. And that's how we built our database. So people power is the main thing. And so what Melissa and I talked about last night is when we put an email out and we say, hey, we need calls to the feds, you know, to some legislator at the federal level, we don't ask that lightly. We don't want to turn the phones on unless we really mean it, because we don't want to make them really angry at us. We know we need to be noisy, but we have to time it. But we really mean it when we ask you to make a phone call. We really mean it when we ask you to sign a letter. It really does count. I was walking the halls in DC in March when we did that, and we knew that they were getting the calls. And it mattered when the lobbyists are going in and asking for something and we're asking for something. So what is the strategy now? Where do we go? You guys all want to know that, right? So at the state level in Minnesota, one of the strategies we developed when the second legislative year was to diversify our bill asks. Don't just have 1 or 2 bills, have 4 or 5. You know, be a pack, attack with a lot. See what you can get. Now, we didn't get much, right? The only thing we got so far out of the state was, the death count, the body count. We wanted better data. But at the federal level, I think we need to try to start the same kind of tactic. Just to catch you up, the appropriations bills are none of them are probably going to pass. The president has said he wants to veto them because they're not raising the actual spending of non-defense spending. So none of them will probably pass, and we'll probably get to a continued resolution, and they'll fund government just at the bare bones level after October 31st to avoid a shutdown. That's probably what's going to happen. But until that happens, we're going to defend everywhere we have to. The Interior bill, where they had these horrible riders, the Ag Appropriations bill is coming up. So wherever we do, that's why you do have to hire lobbyists, is to track all this stuff at the federal level. But so now what we need is offensive. We need an actual bill, a wolf bill that's kind of a messaging bill too, to change the conversation, to take it off of do we delist or do we not delist. Let's try to get our Congress people to tell our agencies how they should be doing things. And so I have a theme, we've talked about it. It's not completely fleshed out yet, but one of the ways we can get something done is to form what we call a caucus, get our champions at the federal level, and we have 2 now in the Senate, and that's Senator Peters and Senator Booker, and then we also have Representative McCollum and another representative, I'm blanking on the name, they've come forward and said they will sponsor legislation. They want legislation. So we're going to be working on some kind of language that a congressperson can go into whatever the appropriate committee will be and say, look, we want to, and that the overall theme I think should be maximize genetic diversity. But some of the ways you do that is, you know, we want more non-lethal methods. We want more encouragement for letting wolves live if people are getting paid to suffer the loss, you know, a bonus for letting a wolf get a second chance. That's one idea. There are many other ideas, and we'll come up with the bill language as we go forward, but certainly not funding activities that reduce genetic diversity. Let's increase it. And so offensive is actually better than defensive. You know, it really is, not to wait and see what they're going to do. So we're going to be forming a caucus, which is where you get the representatives at the federal level to sponsor it. I haven't quite decided on the name, so that there's always a group of legislators at the federal level talking about the issue. Now, so you have many members, if you can, like 10, 20, in this caucus. There are many caucuses at the federal level, and then they're ready when an issue comes up. You have little educational sessions with their staff. You have an ongoing thing going, and that's how to use a lobbyist effectively, is to have them, you know, making sure they're doing this network building amongst elected officials. So we will keep you informed as much as we can at Howling for Wolves. We have our own limitations with communications. We try to do our best. We try not to send too many emails out. Try to keep our website updated. So.
Okay, I'm going to go through this really, really quickly. So what we want to do is just divide up this room in groups. And you can decide what you're interested in or where you think you might be more effective. And there'll be experts in those groups kind of going around. So we're going to just do this twice. You may not get the results of this today, but I assure you that I will be emailing everyone a packet showing you where the link is, showing what we talked about, PowerPoint presentations. I want you to have all the information that we've talked about at your hands, so that instead of you can be like, what did they say? What did Maureen say about this? You know. So I think we'd like to divide the room by people gathering in one section, and you know, I think you were gonna talk about that. Well, okay. So people that are interested in figuring out some effective public comments in anticipation of the wolf management plan hearings. So that's going to be coming up. I don't know if they're. The DNR is playing well, let's put everything on hold and see where these bills go. Well, instead of waiting to see what that happens, like Maureen said, let's go on the offensive so that if the wolf management plan comes up quickly, we know with this administration you're not going to get a lot of notice, and it's going to be on a Tuesday at 11 in the morning. So I think we need to talk about what, like Nancy Warren did in Michigan, what should a Wisconsin wolf management plan look like? So if you're interested in just kind of discussing that, you can maybe this section. Here we want to talk about what can we do to empower the hunter and essentially disarm the sportsman. And how do we support farmers like Jeannie was talking about? How do we get them involved in wildlife so they have a vested interest? If you're interested in that, over here. And then I think if you want to weigh on maybe changing those rules on hound training and captive penning, I think we'll just go in this room, and we're just going to have a discussion, and we'll come back together. Let's see, it's at 4 o'clock, 4:05, we'll come back together, divide again. And what we really want to do is not just a debate, is something, what can we do? So it needs to be an action item. What can we do? Is it letters to the editor? Is it calling our senators? Is there something new and ingenious out there that no one's ever thought of? Somebody has those thoughts. So I think it'll be really important to do that. Then we'll break again. And you know, if we've got a note taker and anything, let's think of some action items and put those in writing so that moving forward from here, we may be able to do something like a phone conference once a month. The tribal leaders and tribal DNRs can come together and talk about what's going on so that we stay in contact, because this is great, but once a year isn't enough to elicit change. So again, wolf hearing people, state management, in any state, supporting our mainstream hunters and our good farmers, like we were talking about, maybe the wildlife-friendly farming program, and getting that going better in Wisconsin. And then hound training and captive penning over there, and then we'll come back together at 4:05, okay?